Hello, citizens of the multiverse, and welcome to Comics Insider, the show where we discuss, break down, and analyze the biggest and best comic books that have come out within recent weeks. Today, we're going to be discussing a book that I've been waiting for the better part of 2 years now, and it is the finale to Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run from the New 52 in Batman Last Night on Earth. Now, fittingly, this is part of the DC Black Label line, which is essentially kind of the upper shelf. What this is Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo tackling what would be the final adventure for their Batman that they set up and elaborated upon in their New 52 Batman run, which I happen to love, as seen by cool little Court of the Owls tattoo right here. I would consider this more an alternative future rather than an Elseworlds. This is pretty self-contained, but you do get more out of this story, in my opinion, if you've read their Batman run. It's one of my favorite Batman runs of all time, so I 100% recommend that you go and read that. Batman Last Night on Earth is obviously by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, but also returning with them is inker Jonathan Glapion and colorist FCO Placencia, who were an integral part to that New 52 Batman run as well. So that gets me super excited going into this book for both the visuals and the writing. If you want a chance to win a free physical copy of the main Greg Capullo cover, which is selling out like gangbusters, make sure to stay to the end of this video, because thanks to the guys down at AJ's Comics, I'm going to be able to give you guys an opportunity to win a copy for yourself. But with all that business out of the way, let's get into this. Batman Last Night on Earth opens up with Batman speeding through Gotham City on a very rainy night, working on a case he's been dealing with for nearly a year. And so this mysterious third-person narrator is kind of displaying some sort of unease at the events that are about to come forth. What we learn is that these 5-foot chalk lines were drawn throughout Gotham, and when observed via satellite images, all culminates to this one image of Batman dead, with the heart being located in Crime Alley. One of the interesting things here is that there's been no death, no murder, no theft, nothing crazy, no colorful criminals about this, just the lines. But of course, Batman has to go and find the truth to the mystery. Alfred warns him against rushing to Crime Alley, but alas, what does Batman do but rush to Crime Alley, only to find a young boy shrouded in rain under an umbrella. And Batman, of course, goes to check on him and do, the Batman thing. But as he begins to turn the umbrella away from the boy's face, he realizes that this is a decomposed corpse that's kind of positioned to look like Bruce Wayne the night his parents died in Crime Alley. As Batman moves in closer, suddenly he hears some sort of mechanism, and the next thing we know, the decomposed corpse has a gun pointed at Batman's face and pulls the trigger. Bruce wakes up dazed and confused to a flash of light and the buzz of a fruit fly. As his vision begins to return, he sees a sane-looking, look-alike of the Joker standing over him. And supposedly, his name is Dr. Redmond Hood, which I get that, Red Hood. It took me a while, Scott Snyder, but I got it. But according to Dr. Hood, Bruce has been in Arkham Asylum for 20 years after murdering his parents in Crime Alley, which leads us to believe that Batman hallucinated being Batman and essentially the last 20 years of his life, which is kind of nuts. Bruce, obviously in disbelief, tries to get himself up, but realizes that he is completely restrained from head to toe, being a danger to the people around him. Alfred makes his appearance here, telling us a bit of his troubled past, and reveals that each one of Bruce's villains were actually orderlies or doctors or assistants in Arkham Asylum, trying to help him get through his troubled past. Alfred grows increasingly upset with the state of this conversation and the state of Bruce's mental health, as this scene ends with Dr. Hood injecting some sort of sedative into Bruce. Again, we find our unconscious Caped Crusader waking up somewhere unfamiliar, but this time it's his padded cell, and he looks for some sort of structural weakness to find his way out, but only finds a hole, and within it a small penny and a T-Rex toy stashed within it. This ends up causing Bruce to lash out in disbelief as he sits there in his own loneliness. Sometime later, Alfred comes to visit Bruce, and the big thing here is obviously Bruce has had time to really think over what's been going on and begins to ask Alfred as to how he can speak Mandarin and Greek, so on and so forth, how he can fight. Alfred simply answers that these skills were just products of the orderlies and the assistants in Arkham trying to help Bruce. There's the librarian, who we learn to be Batman's muse for Tommy Elliot, Hush, who makes him far more well-learned, capable to speak a number of languages. The physical therapist, Dr. Al Ghul, who taught him gymnastics, combat, so on and so forth. And in one final attempt to break these hallucinations, Alfred reveals what appears to be Batman's cowl and costume, which is really just a Wayne Enterprises shock therapy helmet and a straitjacket. And this scene is really jarring because for a moment, Bruce actually considers this to be true, and that's absolutely huge, being one of the most dominant wills and arguably the most dominant mind in the DC universe. Seeing them begin to break him means a lot here. Entering part 2, we pick up with Bruce having taken the suit from Alfred and is currently beating his way through Arkham Asylum and kind of assembling more tools from the cops that he's beaten down, like Jim Gordon's boots or Harvey Bullock's utility belt. But Bruce ends up making it to the top, where none other than Alfred is waiting for him. And by the time we get there, Bruce reveals that he already knows that this entire act was a product of Alfred. He corners Alfred into telling the truth, to where he also says that there's nothing left in this world that Bruce has awoken to. And Bruce, being the obsessed hero that he is, focuses on the fact that he must have failed somehow. He doesn't remember, but if the world is currently in a state of perpetual doomsday, Bruce feels like he must have failed, that he must not have saved them. And I think that that's going to be a really interesting focus going forward. As Alfred continues to talk, Bruce rests his hand on Alfred's face and pulls off an EMP mask, which reveals that Alfred is significantly older than he was letting on. I love this really awesome callback to Batman #1. During their earlier talks in the asylum, Bruce realized that Alfred was much older than he was letting on because of his pulse and his heart rate. He could pick up the fact that it was a lot slower and not nearly as powerful. And here's where we get the first big bit of exposition, and we learn that this entire ploy was a product of Alfred trying to create a world where Bruce Wayne could survive and Batman would never exist. Alfred was building a Gotham for Bruce, but Bruce ended up waking up 2 years too early before they could complete the project. Interestingly enough, Alfred recruits the help of Toyman to help craft this fake Gotham, all by Alfred's design, all acted out by him, and he ends up trying to convince Bruce that this is a fabricated world that gives him a chance to truly live a life, and really just wants Bruce to give this world a chance where Joe Chill never existed, and therefore Batman could never be born. But of course, our Caped Crusader needs to push forward and reconcile with a world he feels like he's failed. And the big question on Bruce's mind is, why is he so much younger when Alfred has clearly aged? But as this chapter closes, Alfred agrees to tell him, at the cost of holding his son one last time. That hit hard. Moving forward, we cut to Batman tunneling his way through the red sand wasteland that was Gotham City. And as he begins to trek through, he finds this tinging noise emanating from a lantern covered in red sand somewhere in the distance. And inside this lantern, as Batman begins to brush off the vibrant red sand, is the disembodied head of the Joker, who has no idea as to how or why he's there. We get a great bit of dialogue between the two characters throughout this exchange that I absolutely love, where the Joker ends up proposing that Batman take him on this adventure and that he'd be a great asset, as he'd surely must remember something as to how this world got to be where it is. And we get a glimpse of this ravaging Speed Force storm above as Batman agrees to take the head of the Joker, his greatest foe, on his final adventure. Now, all that was only the first half of book 1. There is so much to this book that I want to make sure that I can get it all. So we're going to be putting out another review discussion on the second half of book 1, just because I feel like there's so much there that begs to be explored. But just going into the first part specifically, the art team is gunning it. Absolute A1 job. Between the collaboration of Greg Capullo, Jonathan Glapian, and FCO Placencia, I think we're seeing the elevation of Greg Capullo's pencils on another level, just due to the way that Glapian is able to texture the faces and the world that they're crafting. It feels so much more depthful versus what we've normally seen from Capullo. It is absolutely astounding. This incredible use of colors to push the tonality that the creative team are trying to go with on different parts of the story is nuts. You know, you go to the beginning and it's a dark and rainy Gotham, and you get the crazy amount of eye-blistering white when Bruce wakes up in Arkham Asylum, and then, you know, the redness of that desolate wasteland Gotham. There's just something to be said about how they're setting the scene and how cinematic this book feels. Greg Capullo is absolutely killing it in the sequential narrative of it all. It feels so fluid, and I love the way he's emoting the characters in this book. The conversation between Bruce and Alfred, for example, at the end of part 1 is absolutely heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking, man. When I first read that, I felt like the tears were welling up in my eyes. So, you know, between the incredible pencils of Greg Capullo and the absolutely astounding depth and texture provided by the inks, as well as the tone of the color, man, this art team is absolutely killing it. I think that this could be the best project that we've seen those three collaborate on together. Now, of course, there is the writing, and I think we're seeing Scott Snyder at his absolute best. You know that I'm an absolute stickler for dialogue, and I have gone on record in my own videos at times criticizing some of Snyder's dialogue, but it was perfect in this book. Whether you get Bruce and Alfred in the beginning, or Bruce and Alfred under the context of Bruce being in the asylum trying to prove his sanity, and then in the bell tower and him with the Joker, like, it was all so fluid. It felt like it really proved his grasp on the characters and how well he knows them. Which I am a firm believer that dialogue is key to characterization just as much as what the character is doing. And obviously he showed that as well in how we follow the Caped Crusader throughout all of the different trials of this book. Plot-wise, this book just begs so many questions, which gets me beyond excited for the second and third installments of this series, because I don't think I want to wait 2 months, but I will gladly reread book 1 right before book 2 comes out, and then reread both of those when book 3 comes out at this point, because there's just something so great and masterful about the way that the creative team has put this book together, from the way we're narratively following Batman and the way he's interacting in this absolutely inventive and hellish world around him. It is such an immersive experience. I know I normally wait until the end to score a book, but because this book is so large, I do want to score at least the first half, which contains part 1, The Cave, and part 2, The Right Hand. It's an absolute 10 out of 10 for me. You should all make sure to go pick this up. Support these creators and how good this vision is. It is wholesome. It is layered with so much complexity in the stories, the characters, the visuals. It is astounding. I am in love with this book, and it sounds like I'm catering to it, but that's how much I love this. But absolutely astounding. Make sure you guys go check this book out, support the creative teams and your local comic book stores. And speaking of great local comic book stores, the guys over at AJ's Comics are providing me with the opportunity to give you guys a free physical copy of this book. So in order to enter, I will need us to hit at least 15 likes within the first 3 days of this video dropping. The easiest way to get there is by sharing this video with your friends or people you think might be interested. So how do you enter? All you have to do is be a subscriber to the channel. I really want to show my appreciation to those of you who stick around, watch the content. Of course, comment down below answering the question of the day. Did you read Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman? If so, what were your thoughts on it? And if you've read this book already, how do you think it tied in to this book? I really want to make sure you guys go over and show some support to AJ's Comics for giving us the opportunity to get a copy for you. You can find the links to their website and their Twitter in the description below. They're an absolutely awesome shop that I collaborate with on an almost weekly basis, and it's where I pick up my comics. Such a great group of people that are willing to provide you with the best experience when going into a comic book store, from just being friendly and well-natured to providing you with the perfect reading recommendations if you ever have questions or a direction you want to go in. One of the great things is subscribing to their pull list grants you a 10% off discount on everything in their store. Not to mention, if you live far away from a local comic book store and you're one of the amazing men and women that serve our country and live on an international U.S. military base, the shipping's free if you wait for your order to accumulate to $100. Your pull list is managed online, so you don't have to worry about losing anything, any papers, forgetting to tell them what you want. It's quick and easy. They're an awesome store, and truly, I was the one that approached them about being able to promote their store because I think that they're the type of comic book retailer that sets the example for what a comic book store should be. So make sure you go check them out. And of course, to enter, make sure you like this video, subscribe down to the channel below, and answer the question of the day in the comments. And of course, to get to that 15 like goal, share the video with your friends. I really appreciate that support, but it also goes a long way to providing more exposure to the shop because they deserve it too. At the end of the day, I want to thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching this video because this is a book that I am so passionate to talk about, and in general, I appreciate you wanting to hear my thoughts. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video from Dark Knight Nation.